The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 149.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Deep Space Nine episode, The Nagus. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Quark. Dom. Howdy.
That was really good. Really good.
I like that.
Folks, remember to share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this community of listeners. We're having a great time here on The Secrets of Star Trek, and you want to have others join us and have that great time with us. So, yes, we are talking about this first season episode, The Nagus. It's the 10th episode of the first season of Deep Space Nine. Here's a quick recap of the episode.
Wait. This is the 10th episode already? Inconceivable.
Oh, you stole my joke.
I do not think that word means what you think it means. The Zek, who is the Grand Nagus of the Ferengi Alliance and the leader of Ferengi, arrives at Deep Space Nine and takes
technically Emperor Palpatine arrives on Deep Space Nine.
Yes, in the hood with his big, massive valet. Yes, that's the word. And he comes to Quark, tells him, I want to use your bar for a conference. When they have this conference and all of these big Ferengi businessmen show up, he announces that Quark is going to be he's retiring, and Quark is going to be his successor as Grand Nagus, and he abdicates and hands over the role to Quark. And then Nagus dies. The Nagus dies, which apparently makes Quark's appointment permanent, and he chose Quark because the bar is on the edge of the wormhole, and the Gamma Quadrant is the new opportunity for all of Ferengi, and Quark had the foresight to establish an outpost right on the edge of this wormhole before he even knew it was there, so therefore he must be brilliant. Quark has a hard time adjusting to being the new Nagus. He's at first he feels like he's very popular among these other Ferengi businessmen, and then he realizes they're all angling to take him out and take his position, and he gets kind of weirded out by it. Meanwhile, Zek's son Krax, who thought he was going to be the next Nagus, and Quark's brother Rom create this plot to kill Quark and replace him, but they are stopped by Zek, who appears alive, and it was all a ruse in order to show up that Krax, the son, was in fact not ready to become Nagus, and so he basically used Quark to call it his son.
It was a test.
It was a test, and Zek says, "You failed miserably." Meanwhile, Quark congratulates Rom
too.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Quark congratulates Rom for having the lobes to try to kill him, and so he doesn't have any hard feelings there. The B plot of the episode is Sisko is trying to deal with the friendship between Jake and Nog, and there's apparently something, and I want to kind of get into this a little bit. Apparently, something going on with that Nog is pulling Jake into some plot or thing that is causing Jake to not come home before curfew and other things like that. And he will only tell Sisko, to only tell his dad that they're doing something in private. And when Sisko goes and snoops, he finds out that what's happening is that Jake is teaching Nog to read, because Nog is having trouble learning to read. And very nice little upending of expectations there. So that's the recap of the episode. We can get into the stuff as we go, but I do want to point out that this is the first major Ferengi-focused episode of DS9, and it's the first one.
Introduces a key concept for the Ferengi going forward, which is the office of the Nagus.
Right.
Yes.
played in by the convertible Wallace Shawn.
Inconvertible Wallace Shawn. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's inconceivable that he would be so good.
It's inconceivable that anybody. That was the joke I was going to say. It's inconceivable that anybody could play this role other than Wallace Shawn.
Yes,
of course, was in Princess Bride and many, many, many other things. Just he's one of those fantastic comedic actors, and plays this role so well. And this is really the first of all Star Trek, first episode that makes the Ferengi sympathetic.
Yeah.
More than just the little rats you see in the first episode, which of course also include Armin Shimmerman and TNG.
Yeah.
But it's the first. It really gives the Ferengi their own personality and makes them a character you might actually like.
Right. It gives their culture something to something to build on. Yeah.
It starts to. There's still a lot of stuff about the really negative Ferengi characterization in this, like when they're having their meeting. Mm-hmm. To discuss the future prospects. The big thing is they've ruined their reputations in the Alpha Quadrant by being unscrupulous businessmen, and they put that down to the lies of their adversaries.
Right.
But then their plan is now we're going to go into the Gamma Quadrant where our reputations are untarnished, and it'll be just like the old days. We'll be able to succor all these people. Mm-hmm. And they really are coming across pretty negatively to me in this scene. But we are on the road. We're very far down the road to redeeming their culture for Star Trek with this episode. Also, this episode has something else that is unprecedented and unique and precious. We get to hear Morn laugh.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
It's one of the few times we hear Morn make a noise at all.
What are you talking about? He's talking all the time. You just can't shut him up.
I know. That is one of the best recurring gags in Deep Space Nine, is that this bit about Morn, who we never see talk, but apparently never shuts up. So I like that.
It's interesting, speaking of the Nagus, as played by Wallace Shawn, it's interesting to see how similar he is to what he will be once Moogie becomes part of his life, because he's actually already doing things that, I mean, he admits, I'm not as greedy as I used to be. I'm getting old, and he's looking out for the good of the Ferengi Empire. He realizes his son Krax, who we never hear about again.
Yes, he disappears.
It is likely not ready and needs to be tested. So he is not just say, oh, my son, here, take the Empire.
Yeah.
So he is looking out for the good of the Empire. He is looking at retiring. And all of those things, he is willing to hand it over, the Ferengi commercial empire, to someone in Quark's bar.
Right.
And all those things stay in place all the way down to the final episode. But they take on a new cast once Moogie becomes his advisor rather than Krax.
It's interesting. This episode creates it's the first in an arc, we could say, of several episodes of DS9 where we follow Ferengi politics, like you mentioned. It goes throughout the whole thing where it's not Quark who ends up as Nagus, but Rom of all characters, which is interesting to see how Rom's plans eventually come to fruition. And this movement into Ferengi business into the Gamma Quadrant is what eventually brings them into contact with the Dominion. And so, if you think about it, the Ferengi are vital to the entire story arc of Deep Space Nine going the way it does. It's kind of interesting to think about.
I was going to say, you mentioned Rom, too, and, this is where he's starting to get more of a character instead of just being Nog's dad and the barkeep,
Yeah.
He's starting to actually get more of a character and a personality, and we get to see him start to develop a little bit.
Well, and it changes his personality. I mean, originally, the Rom we saw was just a regular Ferengi. He wasn't kind of goofy like this, and we eventually get the kind-hearted Nog. But, at least in this one, we get a little more. They're playing off him being the dumb younger brother bit.
Ooh, maybe he isn't quite so dumb. He just doesn't think the same way.
Exactly. That character is actually has its genesis here. That bit of his character. So that was interesting as well.
Although here he's more like, what, Fredo Corleone?
Yeah.
Well, that's an important point to bring up, by the way, is that this episode was written as a kind of homage to The Godfather. In fact, there's one scene where Quark is in his quarters. I mean, it's an homage to that opening scene of The Godfather where Quark's sitting at his desk. He's got this creature that he's petting. He even like scratches his ear the way Vito Corleone does, and there are blinds on the windows behind him, and like even the dialogue. Yet now you call me Nagus. It's all connections back to The Godfather, which is really was very fun. And in fact, originally as the story was conceived, it wasn't all of Ferengi. It was just going to be all the heads of the various crime syndicates of the Alpha and Beta Quadrant coming together.
Including Vulcans.
Right, Vulcan crime syndicate. It must be logical. But it's very interesting that they then said, no, let's develop the Ferengi, make this a Ferengi thing, and we're all better off for it because it was a great story.
I would love though to see the head of the Vulcan crime syndicate. After repeated studies and analyses, we have concluded with sigma 6 statistical significance that crime does pay.
Yes. Well,
that would be great.
Well, we know they steal homework because after all, they stole Nog's homework.
Yes,
in class.
Yes, yeah. No, that I do want to get to that B plot because that is an interesting. And we'll come back to the Ferengi, but now that you mention it, so Mrs. O'Brien, Keiko O'Brien, is away on Earth for a couple weeks, and so she started the school on the station, and Miles O'Brien is having to be substitute teacher because he doesn't have enough to do as head of engineering for this clackety rap trap of a station that the Cardassians left them. And so he's trying to teach school, and Nog, like they had this essay that was due, and Nog makes an excuse that his homework got stolen by some Vulcans, and he pulls Jake into his lie. And Jake, very, very put out by having to lie for him, but backs him up anyway. It's very clear. O'Brien isn't buying it, of course, but he kind of lets it slide a bit. It goes.
By the way, notice on the lighted blackboard equivalent behind O'Brien, we have the aliens from Catspaw from the original series, as well as Tribbles.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That was fun.
What I like in this sequence is after Captain Sisko comes to the school and the kids have left, he's talking with O'Brien, and they're both parents. Yep. And they're talking about the influence that parents do and don't have over their children's choice of friends, which is a real concern for parents. And I like seeing that real-world concern brought into the show and handled in a realistic way, where Sisko is not happy about the fact that Jake is friends with Nog. He thinks he's going to be a bad influence, which he was earlier in this sequence. He got Jake to lie for him. And Sisko is concerned about Nog being a bad influence, but on the other hand, he's not just laying down the law and saying you can't see him. He's trying to be understanding and reasonable, in part because he probably knows if he tries to crack down too hard, it'll backfire.
Right.
Especially on a small station. It's not like Jake's never going to see Nog.
Right.
Right.
What I find interesting is this. They're kind of actually speciesists. That O'Brien and Sisko kind of agree that Ferengi and humans just cannot get along. That's just not something that will work out. And they kind of have decided that Nog is just going to be a bad influence.
I don't think it's speciesist. I think it's culturalist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that comes out more in the dinner conversation between Sisko and Jake, where the concern and the reason that Ferengis and humans haven't been able to get along well in the past is because of their values are different. And so I think they're recognizing a cultural disconnect. It's not like they're being racist.
And it's interesting seeing that with Sisko of all people, because he very much, through Avery Brooks's own portrayal and everything, very much is this, tolerant, open, all cultures, all peoples, except Ferengi. And that actually is an arc they play throughout the whole series as well. I mean, you see.
On the other hand, he was the one that insisted Quark stay on the station.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's all played to the end, where he's, Jake is missing. He's going, hasn't shown up. He's going to go get Jake. And it's Jake's way of not seeing Nog as this Ferengi and this Ferengi stereotype, but seeing him as a friend and wanting to help him. That helps Sisko kind of overcome a little bit his own bias against the Ferengi, or at least some Ferengi, and eventually allows Nog to become a Starfleet officer.
Nog goes native, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and his pride. I love that at the end, that Sisko's pride in his son. We also see the difficulty that Sisko has continued in being a single dad and commander of the station. I like that they continue to play that. That's really good. Now, at one point, the Nagus finds out that Rom is going to school, the Federation school, and as Nog is going to the Federation school, and Rom forbids Nog from going to that school, and there's this bias against schooling, and I'm thinking that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so we kind of had there's several kind of aspects to this. So Zek, the Nagus, learns that Nog is going to school because Nog is waiting on them at dinner and doesn't want to be waiting on them. It's like, can I please go do my homework? Homework? Why are you doing homework? Yeah. And it's because he's going to this school run by a human female. Mm-hmm. And it's not clear from what the Nagus is very displeased, and Rom instantly forbids Nog to ever go to the school again in a very overdramatic, overhyped fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not clear from this scene whether the problem is it's a school or it's run by a human, or it's because they say it's a Federation school, so it's going to be teaching Federation values. Mm-hmm. And is it the Federation values, or is it the fact it's a female, or is it all of those?
Right.
And it makes no sense for the Ferengis not to value education. I mean, absolutely none. If you're a businessman and you're not educated, your business plan is not going to be well designed. Right. The more you know, I mean, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better you can run your business and the more you can acquire. So it makes no sense for the Ferengis to have a problem with education. So I thought, based on this scene, okay, well, it's the Federation values and the fact it's a female that's the teacher. But then it turns out Nog can't read.
Right.
And it's like, what? I mean, I assume he can count. I assume he's got numeracy if he's handling money and doing ledgers and keeping 2 sets of books, as every good Ferengi does.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and really you're going to need to be able to read as part of, you're going to need to not just have numbers in your ledgers, you're going to need to have alpha characters in there too, to be able to write what the numbers are about. So you need to put, I received 16 cases of syrup of squill. And you need to be able to write syrup of squill. Yep. So it doesn't make any sense that Nog can't read or that they don't value education in general.
I wonder if it's Nog can't read because he's got a learning disability, as opposed to that they just don't value reading. So I think that
nice headcanon, but they don't suggest that.
Yeah, I don't remember any point where they say that he can't learn. Obviously, he can because he goes on to the Starfleet Academy. But I guess I took it where the way that since Ferengi are businessmen and it's capitalism writ large, it's the idea of you go and be an apprentice is how you learn. It's not a formal school. It's you go learn from someone else who's doing the same business you want to go into, type of deal. And maybe the can't read is he can't read Federation Standard, also known as English.
That's perhaps
also nice headcanon, but they've got universal translators.
But the point is, they're reading Federation Standard, and that's the part that he's having trouble reading. It doesn't say that he can't read Ferengi.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, it's a concept that they put out there, but they didn't develop close enough to make it clear what they're talking about. I really do think that it's clear that it's not that he's going to. That's not that he's not, or that he's learning. It's that he's learning human stuff from a female about Federation values. I think all three of those were
I think you're both being very generous to the writers. I think the writers just didn't think this through. They wanted to portray the backwardness of Ferengi culture and the superiority of Federation culture, and made it unreasonably appear that Ferengi don't value education in principle, including reading and writing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what they wanted was to have it end up with Jake teaching Nog how to read, and that's their primary thing. So yeah, I get that. So another thing that shows up for the first time in this episode is the rules of acquisition. And we get the first 2 rules mentioned. The first rule is once you have their money, you never give it back. And the 6th rule is never let family stand in the way of opportunity, which are 2 things that sort of are operative in this episode, right? Like in one sense, Quark has to give back not money, but essentially an opportunity for money by giving back the role of Nagus to Zek at the end of it, but also Rom's opportunity to advance and get what he wants by knocking off Quark, which is interesting. Also interesting that when Rom gets caught trying to kill Quark, that Odo doesn't press charges or anything. That there's no consequences.
Yeah, we had attempted murder on his station, and and nobody. No, this is another flaw in the writing. Also, Rom, as he's later developed, would never do this.
Yeah,
this is completely out of character for the later tender-hearted Rom, and so this is just early bad writing that is entertaining in context, but doesn't fit with where we're going to end up going.
Well, I was going to say that the never let family stand in the way of opportunity probably ends up being the most broken of all the rules of acquisition throughout the show.
It has been pointed out, yes.
So, and then I think, let's see what else. I wanted to mention that Mayhardu, I think it's Mayhardu, played by an actor whose stage name is Tiny Ron, which is ironic, a former basketball player who is 7 feet tall, which is awesome. Yeah. He's in 7 episodes of DS9, and I don't think he ever does. He say one word at the very end? I don't think he ever says a word.
I don't think he ever speaks. I love later when we have Liquidator Brunt as Nagus, and he's got his own valet from the same species. And I love the way Mayhardu and the other actor playing the other valet you see this quiet tension between them. Like they're loyal to their Nagus, and they therefore don't like each other.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. I always enjoy seeing him there. And it's very similar to the.
Oh, I love Mayhardu. He's awesome.
What was that? Troy, Loaxana Troy also has a mute servant who serves her.
He does speak, Mr. Hom.
Yep. Oh, does he?
Yeah. Okay. He eventually says nice drinks.
Yep.
That must be what I was thinking of, where he eventually speaks. Yeah, it must be Mr. Hom. Awesome. And by the way, Tiny Ron also shows up in Voyager as a Hirogen Alpha, which is interesting. And he does get lines in that one, so you do actually get to hear his voice. So what, anything else to say about this episode? Anything I missed there, Father Cory?
Just one thing is you can tell Ferengi ships air seals aren't very airtight since Odo can morph through one of them. He's able to turn to
airlock.
Airlock. He's able to warp, shape shift himself into the ship through the airlock. So they must have bought really cheap seals for their airlocks.
Right.
but that was a good scene where Odo goes and he finds out, oh wait, he's actually still alive. Huh. Interesting.
Right.
Where he's the one that figures out that Zek is still alive. And then Zek, when he died, quote unquote, he died of a tympanic membrane inflammation, also known as an inflammation of the eardrum.
Yes, he had an earache that he died of. Well, and I love the fact that for Ferengi, it's always like references to their ears. You don't have the lobes. With a fatal earache. All these things. I think it's just really kind of funny. It's one of those funny quirks, not quarks, quirks of the species. All right, Jimmy, anything left to say about this episode?
So Mayhardu serves as a taster for the Nagus early on in this, and that really makes no sense in the age of scans. But whatever. I don't like the way the reputation problem is handled, because it's played for comedy, and it's too broad, and the comedy is too broad, and the logic is bad. I mean, these people should be focusing on why is our reputation bad and how can we fix it? Because the problem will just replicate in the Gamma Quadrant, and they're wrong that our reputations will be sterling. No, they won't. Your reputations will be none until you start establishing contact. It's like a person who's never taken anything out on credit. They have no credit rating. Right. And so if you've never done business with someone, they're not going to automatically trust you and assume your word is good. You're from some foreign culture that has who knows what values compared to Gamma Quadrant values. You're going to have to prove yourself as as new businessmen in this quadrant. So you can't just assume your reputation is going to be good there. It's going to be non-existent there until you establish it. And you're not the only ones going through the wormhole. So so the people in the Gamma Quadrant are going to be saying, hey, Human, what do you know about these Ferengi? Are they good to do business with? They really want our business. And the Humans are going to say, oh, don't trust them. So your reputation's going to be poisoned immediately. So this makes no sense, and it's played for overbroad comedy, and I don't like that.
Well, if just to add a point to that too, and it doesn't make sense for them to be offended that they have a bad reputation, because they also, in the same episode, talk about greed is good. Like, hey, having a bad reputation is good.
And not just that greed is good, but they'll take our words until we decide to break them. Ha ha ha!
Yes.
And, and they're laughing about the fact they break their word.
And
so I didn't like that sequence. After Zek pretends to die, and it's apparently a meditation technique that Mehardu taught him. They then have his desiccated remains, which is another concept that gets introduced and will play a role in the future when Quark thinks he's dying and signs a contract to sell his desiccated remains.
Yep.
And interestingly, they're green. But while they're at Zek's funeral, where they're selling the desiccated remains, and for people who haven't seen this, it's like some green powder that's in a clear circular handheld glass case or plastic case. So they're selling these at the funeral. And then there's a drone strike on Quark to take him out. And we later learned that Rom and Krax were behind the drone strike. But Odo, and this is another writing limitation from the early to mid-1990s, Odo reasons, well, the two logical suspects would be Krax, who wanted to be Nagus, and Graal, who had already threatened Quark. But it couldn't have been either one of them who sent the drone, because they were both at the funeral, and therefore neither one of them could have pressed a button on his phone to summon the drone.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, they're not realizing, the writers are not thinking through the implications of remote control technology. I mean, the phone thing is mine, but today you would not rule out a person from summoning a drone just because he wasn't at a funeral. Even if you're at the funeral, you just surreptitiously bring out your iPhone and you press the button to summon the drone to attack the target. That's totally doable.
I suppose I was thinking at the time, they couldn't have done it because who would be dumb enough to be there when the bomb went off?
Except this is a very targeted explosion. It didn't kill Quark, and he only ducked.
Yeah.
If a bomb is strong enough to kill everybody at the funeral, that would be an argument. But this bomb was not.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
And then we have Quark so the plot to get rid of Quark after the drone strike fails is they're going to trick him into going to meet with non-existent representatives from the Gamma Quadrant and get him into an airlock and space him. And they get him in the airlock, and they're ready to space him, and they're almost going to... Rom, in fact, is about to push the button to space him when Zek shows up with Odo and announces he's actually alive, really. And I find it so I can never see airlocks these days without thinking this through. And Quark actually does something that's pretty good here. He gets close to the inner surface of the airlock, and he's beating on it and saying, let me out and stuff. But he's standing where he should be. Because if you're standing close to the inner airlock door, there's not very much air in front of you, and therefore you will not experience much pushback when the outer airlock door opens. Also, this airlock is so small that I don't think he'd be blown out anyway if he just held on to something.
Right.
But airlocks should have internal emergency opens.
Yes, you should not be able to.
If you're trapped in an airlock, there should be a panic button to let you back in. That should not be overwritable from the inside.
Well, there should also be a simple switch on the airlock that, hey, there's no ship here. Do not allow this system to open to the outside space.
Right. Yeah, that's the design, the sci-fi design of airlocks leaves a lot to be desired for safety's sake.
But those are my comments.
Awesome. I think that should do it for this time. That was a good episode. I enjoyed that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
One of the best first season episodes, I think. That's my opinion. So let's take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. Now's a great time to become a StarQuest patron, thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter. When you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give, the first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor to support all our shows, including this one, which makes your gift go even further. We are so very close to reaching our goal of $2,000 in new monthly pledges. We need that to reach that goal in order to have some new resources for projects that we're working on, like new shows, a new website. So won't you help us close that gap? Get us over the line. We really appreciate it. If you've been thinking of becoming a StarQuest patron, now's the time. Don't wait. Visit sqpn.com/give today. Also like to thank Victor Lambs for editing the show for us every week. So that's it from us. What do you think of Deep Space Nine's episode, The Nagus? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Voyager episode Scorpion Part 2. This is the fourth season premiere and the follow-on from our last Voyager episode we discussed. So Scorpion Part 2. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.
And Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, you don't grab power, you accumulate it quietly without anyone noticing.